Chapter 158, A Test 1. Zyro-Kai looked at the researchers' pale faces and said, "Comrades, this blade is your weapon. From now on, you will follow us to get supplies and practice killing zombies. Although we can protect you for a while, we can't protect you forever. The best way to survive in the apocalypse is to get stronger and protect yourself. So we won't give you fishes, but we will teach you how to fish," he added with a grin. Although the new members were hoping that they would be protected, they also understood that depending on themselves was more reliable than depending on others. So, after they heard Zyro-Kai's words, no one raised an objection and held their blades tightly. Seeing this, Zyro-Kai was satisfied. Not long after, Shen Jinj and Gao Bohai walked over. Standing in front of them, Gao Bohai said, "Welcome to the team, comrade. From today onward, I will be your mentor." He pointed at Shen Jinj and added, "He will be your vice mentor. We will protect everyone during your training, but we also hope that everyone won't be reckless and will follow your orders and instructions. Now make a team of 2 people and follow us," he added. As husband and wife, Jiang Lingxi formed a group with Chen Ji. The rest of the researchers were divided into 2 teams, one with 3 people in the team. At first, the new members were worried and nervous, but after they walked for a while, they slowly let down their guards since they didn't meet any zombies. Walking on their side, Shen Jinj and Gao Bohai watched their reactions and behaviors. Out of 7 people, 2 of them were more relaxed compared to the rest. They didn't check their surroundings and were busy chatting. As for the other 5 people, they held their weapons and looked around. Although their alertness was not as high as before, they still did not relax and remained vigilant. Seeing this, the corner of Gao Bohai's lips lifted. This round was a test for the new members. Although they welcomed them into their team, they wouldn't accept members who couldn't protect themselves and would drag the team down. With Qin Luzi leading the way, they reached the warehouse area in less than an hour. As usual, Zyro-Kai and Feng Yun went to get the supplies first, while Zhao Lijai took the rest later. As for Zhang Yuan and the rest, they went to check the factory for any survivors. Since it was a test for the new members, Qin Luzi deliberately chose the road where they might meet zombies. Zra! The moment they took a turn, a group of zombies wandering on the road smelled their scent and let out a roar as they rushed over. Seeing this, the new members' faces turned pale and their bodies trembled with fear. This time, the soldiers took several steps back and stood behind the new members. The new members stood rooted in place as they faced the zombies head-on and smelled the rotten stench in the air. Zra! The zombies reached their location and pounced on them with their mouths wide open. Seeing that the new members were still doing nothing, Shen Jinj frowned and said, "What are you doing? Are you waiting to be eaten alive?" As soon as they heard this, 2 of them turned around and ran away while the rest dodged the zombies. Seeing this, the soldiers let the 2 go, not even bothering to pursue them. "Open your eyes and watch their movements. After you dodge the attack, find an opening and aim at their heads," Shen Jinj said calmly from a distance. With a group of people near the zombies didn't pay much attention to those in the distance. The Phantom team members watched them dodge the zombies' attacks nervously. These new members were ordinary people. For them, fighting the current zombies was not easy, let alone 3 zombies at once. "Brother Jinj, should we kill 2 zombies and leave one for them to practice?" Zyro-Kai asked. "No need, they need to face a life-threatening situation to get stronger as soon as possible," Shen Jinj replied. While they were discussing the situation, Chen Ji saw a zombie aiming its sharp claw at his wife's back. The moment he saw this, his mind went blank and he rushed over without hesitation. Before he could use his body to block the attack, he heard Shen Jinj's voice. "Use your blade." The moment he heard this, Chen Ji raised his blade instinctively. Clang crit. The sound of metal colliding with sharp objects echoed in his ears. His heart was thumping wildly, while adrenaline rushed through his body. He looked straight into the zombie's grey eyes. His hands felt numb from the attack, and he was so scared. When he almost gave up, he saw his wife struggling, fighting another zombie nearby. Just the thought of losing his wife made his blood rush to his head. A silver light flashed for a second in his eyes as he pushed the blade. Pushed by him, the zombie staggered back. "Aim for its head." Hearing Shen Jinj's instruction, Chen Ji swung his blade while shouting, "Ah!" Crash! His blade chopped at the zombie's head and split it open like a rotten melon. Black blood and rotten matter splashed onto his hands and dripped to the ground. The rotten stench and the disgusting scene made his stomach churn. "Zra!" But before he could vomit, he heard another roar coming from behind him. At this moment, he no longer had the mind to think about vomiting. Pulling out his blade, he turned his body while swinging his blade. Crack! This time, Chenji's blade struck the zombie's shoulder. Seeing that his attack failed to kill the zombie, his eyes widened with fear. Raw! The zombie didn't feel any pain and raised its arms as its sharp claws aimed at his chest, not giving him any time to rest. Chapter 159, A Test 2. Seeing the incoming attack, Chenji let go of the blade and took several steps backward, barely dodging the attack. Not far from him, a young man saw this and rushed over. Before the zombie was able to pierce Chenji's chest with its claws, he swung his blade and chopped at the zombie's head. Crack! This time his attack hit the target, but his strength was not enough to split the rotten head open. His blade was stuck in the zombie's head. He wanted to pull out his blade, but his strength was not enough. Raw! The zombie was angered and opened its mouth to bite him. When he saw this, the young man closed his eyes and waited for the pain. Boom! He waited for a while but felt no pain. Opening his eyes, he saw the zombie in front of him had been killed. Its head was blasted off, and blue flames engulfed its body. Standing in the distance, Shen Jinj looked at him and said, "Open your eyes, take your weapon and help your comrade." The young man came back to his senses and quickly picked up his blade. He quickly ran to the side and joined his team to kill the last zombie. With 5 people killing one zombie, they were able to kill it in less than 5 minutes. After they killed their first zombie, the initial fear had lessened. They stood there, breathing heavily, but their eyes were bright and the corners of their lips were lifted. Everyone was delighted to see them successfully kill the zombies and showered them with praises and encouragement. Shen Jin shook his head and poured a bucket of cold water on the new members as he said, "From how you fought just now, at least 2 of you are confirmed to be dead, and 3 of you have a low chance of survival." He glanced at Chenji and said, "When you fight, don't scream or shout. Zombies are sensitive to smell and sound. If you shout during a fight, you will attract more zombies and end up being surrounded." He then pointed at Jiang Lingxi and the other 2 men before he said, "The 3 of you fight as if you are alone. When you are fighting in a group, you must coordinate your attacks with your teammates. Without coordination, you not only limit your strength and chance of attacking, you might even hinder your teammates' attack and be killed instead." Then he looked at the young man and said, "Your reaction and observation are good, but you are too weak. If you are unable to take the zombie head-on, then you have to hit and run." He looked at the new members and concluded, "All of you did well for your first battle against the zombies, but you have a lot of room for improvement. The most urgent things are to improve your stamina and strength. At the same time, we need to train your teamwork." Standing by his side, Gao Bohai laughed, patted his shoulder and said, "Jinj, you are right. Since you can see their strengths and weaknesses, then I will let you handle them." When he finished his words, he walked away in a good mood. Watching his brother dump this trouble on him, Shen Jinj sighed and said to the new members, "Go check the zombies' heads for crystals. You can keep the crystals if you find them." The new members looked at the rotten matter and felt nauseous. Seeing that they didn't want to search for the crystal, Shen Jinj just burned the corpses and picked up a crystal. He handed the crystal to Chenji and said, "This crystal is a good thing and can save your life in an emergency. It can be used to exchange for supplies too." Since there was only 1 crystal, they agreed to let Chenji keep it. Each of them would take turns if they found more later. As they checked for survivors, Shen Jinj let the new members kill the wandering zombies. With the goal of getting more crystals and under Shen Jinj's instructions, they no longer felt afraid and were able to fight more effectively. At the same time, Zyro Kai and Feng Yun stuffed their spaces to the brim and managed to collect a total of 2 warehouses worth of supplies. When they were done, Jin Zuyin said, "Go check the perimeter and see if there are any survivors." "Yes, Captain," the 2 of them replied in unison and left the warehouse area. After they had left, Zhao Lijai entered the warehouse. She looked at the boxes piled so high that they almost touched the ceiling and said, "Brother Yan, with these supplies, we don't have to worry about a food shortage if you want to build a base." Jin Zuyin chuckled and said, "Ajai, in this life, I don't want to build a base anymore." Zhao Lijai was stunned by his words. Turning around, she looked at him and asked, "Why? Isn't it good to own a base? You can get a lot of crystal cores just from the tax and entrance fees alone." Hearing her words, Jin Zuyin shook his head and replied, "Although it looks profitable, managing a base is not easy and very tiring. Rather than worrying about the safety of a base and other people, I prefer to spend more time with you. Isn't it good to become a mercenary team? He asked her back. Zhao Lijai thought for a moment and said, well, it's not bad. Seeing her frown, Jin Zuyan held her hands and said, Aitg, I want freedom so I can be with you, therefore I won't build a base. If you want to stay at a base, we will choose one and stay there. If you want to travel, we can just pack up and leave. We can find lots of supplies and kill lots of zombies. We don't have to worry about anything or anyone. Chapter 160, Return to Linen University. Zhao Lijai looked at Jin Zuyan and noticed his seriousness. Since he didn't want to build a base, then she wouldn't force him. She smiled and said, Brother Yan, if you don't want to do it, then we won't do it. Good, Jin Zuyan nodded. After their brief conversation, Zhao Lijai started collecting the military rations. There were not only compressed biscuits and self-heating meals stored in the warehouse, but also various rations with a long shelf life. Besides the main entrees such as staple food, meat, seafood and fish dishes, there were also side dishes, desserts, snacks, powdered drink mixes, various sauces and seasonings. Looking at the variety of military rations, Zhao Lijai finally understood why the size of the warehouses was several times larger than the other factories. It took her almost 2 hours to collect all the military rations into her space. Not long after, Zhang Yuan and the rest returned, followed by a group of survivors. When Zhao Lijai noticed that only 5 new members returned, she knew that the other 2 had either run away or died. With so many phantom team members with them, it was impossible for them to die, so the only reason was that they ran away. As for the survivors, fewer than 20 people returned with the team. As usual, Xirokai gave them enough supplies for 2 weeks and told them to go to Jiangning City. With a clear direction, the survivors finally had some hope to continue. After receiving their supplies and daggers, they left together. Jin Zuyan walked over to his team and asked, Old Qin, have you found another survivor? Qin Luzi nodded and said, there is a group of ability users staying in the main building and refusing to leave. We already checked their situation, and they have enough supplies that could last them for at least 6 months. Since they had enough supplies, Jin Zuyan nodded and said, we will return to Linen University. The moment everyone heard his words, they were surprised. Zhang Yuan looked at him and asked, Captain, why do you want to go back? Jin Zuyan looked at his team and explained, there are still a lot of survivors staying in this area. The distance between this place and Linen University is too close. If we don't clear out the zombies, there will always be a hidden danger of a zombie horde. We all know that the number of survivors is low compared to the zombies. If we don't remove this hidden danger, what if one day a high-level zombie appears and triggers a zombie horde? The survivors might not have a chance of survival. If they are infected and turn into zombies, the number of zombies in this city will increase, and the situation might get out of hand. By then, it will be too late to control the zombie population and save the survivors. Although we have retired from the military, we should still have our bottom line. We can also use this chance to improve our level and earn more crystal cores. No matter the reason, this only benefits us. After they heard his reasoning, the Phantom team members thought that their captain's decision actually made sense. Therefore, no one had any objections, except the new members. They thought that they would be able to live a more stable life. Unexpectedly, after joining the team, their risk of being wounded and killed was even higher as they were forced to fight against the zombies. The new members hesitated for a while before one of them said, Captain Jin, I think I can't fit into your team. Can you give me some supplies instead? I want to go to the survivor camp. As soon as he said this, another man added, I also want to go to the survivor camp. When Jin Zuyan heard this, he nodded and said, you are free to leave. Xirokai, give them the supplies. Yes, Captain, Xirokai nodded, and with a wave of his hand, a pile of supplies appeared in front of them. The 2 researchers had backpacks, so they divided the supplies evenly. Before leaving, one of them said, Thank you for saving my life, comrades. The other also thanked them and left with the man. After they had gone, Jin Zuyan looked at the rest and asked, Have the 3 of you made up your mind? You can still leave now. Captain, I want to stay in this team, Chen Ji said without hesitation. Me too, Jiang Lixin said firmly. Jin Zuyan looked at the young man and asked, How about you? The young man clenched his fists, thought for a moment and said, Captain, I also want to stay and get stronger. Seeing his determination, Jin Zuyan nodded and said, Good, from today onward you are officially joining my team. To stay in my team, I want total loyalty. If one day you betray the team, I will kill you with my own hands." Hearing his words and seeing his cold eyes, the three of them shuddered and felt a chill run down their spines. Understood. The next moment, a smile appeared on Jin Zuyan's face. He pointed at the young man and asked, "You haven't told us your name and age." "Captain, my name is Yu Fian. Yu as in remain, Fu as in scent, and Yun as in sunlight. I'm 22 years old this year." When the members heard his name, they nodded and thought that it somehow suited him very well. Since they had finished collecting the supplies in the factory district, and there were still several hours before sunset, they left the factory in their armored vehicles and drove toward Linen University. At the same time in Linen University, a female zombie was standing on the rooftop. Her dress was tattered and covered in black blood. As the wind blew, her sparse hair fell off her rotten head. When she saw the hair fluttering in the air, her dull grey eyes flickered for a second. Raising her head, she opened her mouth and let out an angry roar. Roar! The moment the surrounding zombies heard the roar, their bodies stiffened, and they stood unmoving, raising their heads in her direction. The female zombie lowered her head and looked at her hands without moving. Not long after, another roar echoed from the distance. Chapter 161, Emerging of a High-Level Zombie. Roar! As the roaring sound got closer, the female zombie turned her head, and the corner of her torn lips lifted. The moment she saw a blurred figure appear in the distance, she bent her stiff knees and leaped into the air. Boom! The collision between two punches sent a wave of wind through the surroundings, raising dust and debris. Although the two zombies were at the same level, the male zombie, with a pair of muscular, massive arms, won in the battle of raw strength. Boom! Crack! The female zombie was sent flying, crashing into the ground. A huge crack appeared beneath her stiff body. Her right arm was shattered from the impact of the punch. When she saw the male zombie rushing toward her, she rolled to the side and used her limbs to leap into the air. Boom! The male zombie missed his target, and his punch landed on the ground. His fist buried itself into the earth from the force and got stuck. Seeing the opening, the smile on the female zombie's face widened. As she clasped her hands, her shattered arm had already recovered. Duog! Crack! Her clasped hands smashed the back of the male zombie's head, burying it in the ground. As the female zombie pinned him down with her legs, she opened her palms and stabbed her sharp claws into his nape. Crash! Roar! The male zombie let out an angry roar and struggled to free himself. But before he could throw the female zombie off, she pulled out her claw and pierced his neck again. Crack! This time, her sharp claw finally managed to break the male zombie's neck. The sound of cracking bones echoed in her ears. The next moment, the female zombie's eyes flashed with light before she ripped the male zombie's head off and split it in half. Black blood and rotten matter splashed on her dress and body, but all she cared about was the rotten brain matter. She scooped it up and devoured it as if it were a delicacy. Crack, crack! As soon as she found the crystal core, she threw the rotten head away and swallowed the crystal. The next moment, her dull grey eyes turned black, and she let out a roar. Roar! Energy waves spread out from her body, rippling toward the surrounding zombies. The lower-level zombies instantly knelt down with their heads lowered, their bodies trembling in fear. The female zombie raised her head and let out another roar. This time, the dull black eyes slowly regained some light. After the energy in her body calmed down, she looked to her left and let out a broken, hoarse voice. KHK, Iljai, GH, Ow, Shai, GRHHK. Roar! After letting out another roar, she grabbed the nearest zombie and split its head open. As she devoured the rotten brain, the light in her dark eyes grew brighter. When the sun was setting on the western horizon, Jin Zuyan and his team found a gas station. Using the radio, he gave out his order to his team: "We will stay here for the night." Understood, Shen Jin's voice came from the radio. As they entered the gas station, Qin Luzi checked the map in his head and said with a frown, "Captain, there are no zombies within a 100-meter radius." When they heard this, everyone's expressions turned solemn. An area without zombies was never a good sign. Thinking about the distant roar they had heard not long ago, Zhou Huajian said, "Captain, maybe there is a zombie horde." Jin Zuyan shook his head and said, "More likely, a high-level zombie has emerged." The moment they heard this, everyone was stunned. Besides Zhao Lijai, no one on the team had broken through yet. If they encountered a high-level zombie, the risk of casualties would be high. Noticing their worries, Zhao Lijai said, "Don't worry. Even if a high-level zombie appears, it likely can't think yet. Most of its attacks will be based on instinct. As long as we work together, we will have a better chance of killing it." The team members nodded at her words, but worry still lingered in their eyes. Once inside the gas station, they refueled and checked the warehouse. Ziro Kai and Feng Yun went to collect the supplies while the rest went to prepare dinner. After sharing their resources with the survivors, they had more room to store goods from the mini-market. As for the warehouse, they could only store 5 drums of oil. Zhao Lijai waited until the others had gone to the mini-market before she returned to the warehouse to take the remaining oil and supplies. She even found more than 500 LPG portable cylinders, most of them full, with only a few empty. As she walked back toward the mini-market, she recalled that every gas station should have underground tanks to store fuel. Judging from the size of this station, there should be several such tanks. She went to the pump to check the types of fuel available. There were 4 gasoline pumps, 3 diesel pumps, and 2 liquid natural gas pumps. Based on that, there were likely at least 9 underground tanks. Just thinking about how much oil she could collect, if she managed to store those underground tanks, made her excited. But she had never tried collecting such a massive object before, so she wasn't sure if it would work. "I will just try it tomorrow before we leave," she muttered under her breath. Having made up her mind, she walked to the mini-market, had dinner with her team, and then went to rest. As the night deepened, the red moon shone brighter than it had the previous night. From afar, the sound of zombie roars could be heard from time to time. The team members were already used to the silence of nighttime and no longer felt depressed or anxious. While taking turns on night watch, they would pass the time by chatting with each other. At this moment, Yu Fian was unable to sleep. When he heard the faint sound of voices, he sat up and looked toward the entrance. Seeing 2 members chatting there, he got up and walked over to them. Chapter 162, Similar Experiences. Hearing the faint footsteps, Feng Yun and Qin Luzi stopped talking and turned around. When they saw Yu Fian, Feng Yun asked, "Can't sleep?" Yu Fian nodded and sat beside them. He raised his head and looked at the red moon while saying, "Brother, do you think this hellish world will get better one day?" Qin Luzi played with his dagger and replied casually, "I doubt it." Hearing this, Yu Fian let out a sigh and muttered, "I wonder if my family will be able to survive." This time, no one answered him because no one knew the situation in other places, or whether their families had turned into zombies, been killed by the zombies, or managed to survive. After a long silence, Yu Fian asked again, "Brother Qin, why did you decide to retire from the military? Isn't it good to work as a soldier?" Qin Luzi glanced at him and asked in return, "Fian, do you think the government is still the same as before?" "Brother Qin, do you mean the government is no longer the same?" Feng Yun asked with surprise. Qin Luzi let out a chuckle and said, "When people turn into those mindless monsters, no one can decide who turns and who doesn't, including the leaders. What if the leaders turn into zombies? Who is sitting in the highest position now? Is he worthy or capable of managing the country? Right now, we can't find any information at all since communication is cut off. We can only use the satellite phone, but how many satellite phones are out there?" "So this is your reason?" Yu Fian asked again. Qin Luzi looked at the dagger in his hand and replied, "Not really. When the world turned into this hell, my brothers and I were also caught off guard. We didn't know where these monsters came from until some of us turned into zombies. They killed and ate our brothers in front of us. We hesitated to kill them since they were once our brothers, and it worsened the situation. Until our captain killed them, we weren't able to control the situation. When we were able to control the situation, we had lost more than half of our team members." Raising his head, he looked at the hazy night sky and continued, "Soon after, we were ordered to pick up a young master from a wealthy family by the commander in the capital. During the mission, we lost lots of brothers, until we were left with 52 people. He turned to them and asked, 'Do you know how it felt to kill your own brother with your own hands?' Feng Yun and Yu Fian went silent as they listened to him. Qin Luzi let out a bitter chuckle and said, "Their last words were to ask us to find and protect their families. They begged me to kill them before they turned into monsters. They died to give the team a way to escape, so how could we ignore their last plea?" Yu Fian lowered his head and said, "Brother Qin, I'm sorry. As soldiers, it's not uncommon to lose our lives during missions. We were already prepared for it," Qin Luzi replied. "Brother Qin, how did you all awaken your abilities?" Feng Yun asked. Qin Luzi thought for a moment and said, The first one to awaken an ability was our captain. 3 days before the apocalypse, the captain suffered from a high fever. We thought that he would die from the fever. Fortunately, he woke up and the fever subsided. Afterward, more members got sick and soon awakened their abilities. "How about you?" Euphyon asked. Chin Luzi smiled and said, I came back from the gate of hell. I was severely injured by the zombies and infected. At that time, 8 of us were injured while some of us were dead. We thought we would definitely become zombies, so we requested permission to fight to the death. When we were losing hope, the captain told us that we had a chance to awaken our abilities, and that being injured by zombies didn't mean we would definitely turn into one of them. Out of the 8 people, 7 of us didn't show any signs of mutation and developed a high fever, showing signs of awakening an ability. Feng Yun looked at him and asked, "What about the other one?" Hearing this, Chin Luzi rolled up his sleeves and showed his arm to them. There was a deep scar on his arm as if his flesh had been bitten off. Around the scar, they could see dark blue lines, similar to those on the zombies' bodies. Seeing this, their eyes widened in shock, and they looked at him in disbelief. Meeting their gaze, Chin Luzi said calmly, "The last one already turned into a zombie." Euphyon looked at him and said, "Brother Chin, you." At that time, I only felt cold, as if I was thrown into an ice cave. Even though my consciousness was drifting, I could still hear people talking around me. I was sure I was going to die, but I heard the captain's voice telling me to hold on, Chin Luzi said as he recalled his experiences back then. I don't know what he did, but the next moment, I felt warm energy entering my bloodstream, giving me the strength to hold on to my last bit of consciousness. After a long time, I woke up and awakened my ability, he added. When they heard his story, Euphyon was shocked, amazed, and relieved, but Feng Yun was thinking about his own experiences. Chin Luzi's experience and his own experience during the awakening were similar. He looked at his hand and stared at the scar. After a long time, he turned his head and looked in Zhao Lijai's direction. What did she give me at that time that pulled me back from death? He thought inwardly. After the conversation, they were lost in their own thoughts. When the second half of the night came, they went to sleep while Gao Bohai and Li Sikai replaced them for the night watch. Chapter 163, Exposed. Early the next morning, before sunrise, the Phantom Team's members were already awake and cooking breakfast after washing up. Everyone knew that today would be a tiring day since they were going to the zombies' den, so they cooked a filling breakfast for today. They made a pot of rice, a pot of vegetable soup, scrambled eggs, grilled sausages, and bacon. Although the dishes were simple, everyone ate with gusto, especially the new members. Not knowing when they would die, they ate to their heart's content and finished it with a cup of pond water. After breakfast, Jin Zuyan briefed the plan to his members, while Zhao Lijai listened on the side while counting the crystal cores. Everyone was focused on the briefing, and no one noticed her using her backpack as a cover to take out the crystal cores from her space. They had a lot of elemental-type crystal cores, and she already knew the members' abilities. Thinking about the number of zombies in Linen University, she prepared 50 crystal cores for each of them. This amount was more than enough for them to fight without rest for more than 20 hours. When she was done, she went to Zyro Kai and asked, "Brother Zyro, can you give me some empty water bottles?" Zyro Kai nodded and asked, "Sister-in-law, we have a lot, how many do you need?" There were 17 members in their team right now, including herself. If each of them was given 3 bottles, then they needed at least 51 bottles. Since she had her own bottle, she said, "Can you give me 48 bottles?" Zyro Kai nodded and took out the empty bottles from his space. After they drank the water, they had to give the empty bottles to him so they could be reused again after he washed them. This time, she didn't go to the corner and directly filled the empty bottles with her pond water. She put her fingertips above the bottle's mouth and took out the pond water from her space. With water flowing from her fingertips, everyone thought she was using her ability, including Jin Zuyan. At this moment, only Feng Yun was watching her attentively. He had tasted the water given by Chen Kai Feng and Zhao Lijai. Compared to mineral water, the water produced by the water-type ability users tasted better. Chen Kai Feng's water tasted fresher than mineral water, with a faint hint of a sweet aftertaste. Zhao Lijai's water tasted sweeter than Chen Kai Feng's, with a vague mint fragrance. But the water given to them during the battle against the zombie horde was different. The sweetness of that water was less than Zhao Lijai's and lacked the mint fragrance. But it was more refreshing. and whenever he drank it, he could feel a faint warm energy spreading through his body. Although minuscule, he could feel that his ability and mental energy recovered after consuming that water. Even the fatigue and soreness in his muscles were lessened after consuming that water. He had been observing her for a while and noticed that despite being given a lot of crystal cores by their captain, she didn't carry them with her. At first, he thought that she had hidden them in her car and went to check it, but no matter how he searched, he couldn't find a trace of those crystal cores. At that time, a guess flashed through his mind. Perhaps like Chin Luzi, she was also a dual ability user, so he continued his observation and finally caught her. Her backpack was clearly flattened, a sign that there weren't many items inside, but she was able to take out so many crystal cores and other items from it. Due to this, he was sure that besides her water-type ability, she had also awakened a space-type ability. Recalling how their captain always guarded the warehouse entrances while she went inside, the corners of his lips lifted. Since their captain was aware of her space, it might have been his decision not to disclose her second ability as a backup plan. If that was the case, then he wouldn't expose her second ability and would have to help her cover it instead. After the mystery of the supplies and crystal cores was unveiled, the only question left was her water. He watched her fill the empty water bottles, and suddenly, a bold guess appeared in his mind. Back then, several of his high school classmates were avid fans of fantasy novels and movies. They always talked about Kainkun bags, spatial space, and spiritual palaces that could host living beings such as plants, animals, and humans. He always thought that was nonsense. If that were possible, the human race would be able to travel across universes or even visit parallel worlds. But now, with humans awakening their superpowers and himself owning a spatial space, those possibilities no longer sounded impossible. Perhaps Zhao Lijai's space was different from his, and she had something called a spiritual spring in her space. If she really owned that kind of space, wouldn't the human race have hope for the future? She could plant food and raise animals, solving the issue of food shortages. With the spiritual spring, she could improve ordinary people's conditions and lower the risk of them turning into zombies. But even if she could benefit lots of people, would she be willing to share her treasure? When he reached this conclusion, he looked at Jin Zuyan's side profile and wondered if he also knew what type of space Zhao Lijai owned and what his plans were regarding that space. Averting his gaze, he made up his mind. Since his life was saved by his captain and Zhao Lijai, then no matter what their decision was in the future, he would stand by their side. As their friend and a member of the Phantom team, his loyalty lay with them. Having resolved his confusion and made up his mind, Feng Yun no longer cared whether Zhao Lijai's space was a spiritual space or not. He only needed to cover up her actions so no one would find out about her space and put her and their team in danger. Chapter 164, Underground Oil Tanks. After the briefing, Zhao Lijai divided the pond water and crystal cores with everyone. She also gave the new members a belt bag to store their crystal cores and emergency medicine. When they finished the preparations, they left the mini-market. Before leaving, Zhao Lijai tugged at Jin Zuyan's sleeve and said, "Brother Yan, can you leave with them first? I will catch up as soon as possible." The moment he heard her words, Jin Zuyan instantly refused with a frown. No way. Zhao Lijai wanted to take away the underground tanks, and she couldn't do it in front of everyone, so she wanted to stay behind and take the tanks after they left. Unexpectedly, a certain someone would refuse her without even thinking. "Then how about telling them to leave first and you stay with me?" she negotiated. Jin Zuyan stared at her and asked, "Tell me what you want to do first." Zhao Lijai glared at him, but seeing how stubborn he was, she had no choice but to tell him. "Brother Yan, I want to see if I can take away the underground tank. Right now, only you know about my space, so I need them to leave first before I can try it." When he heard her plan, Jin Zuyan said, "Aitg, the size of the underground tank is massive. Are you sure you will be all right after storing the tank in your space? What if you end up like Zyro Kai from overusing your space?" Noticing his worries, Zhao Lijai softened her tone and said, "That's why I want to try it. If I can get the underground tanks, then we don't have to worry about running out of gas. It will save us during emergency situations." After hearing her words, Jin Zuyan thought for a while before saying, "All right, but if you can't do it, then you should stop right away. I don't want you to harm yourself just because of this matter." "Okay," Zhao Lijai agreed readily. Jin Zuyan glanced at her for a moment before going to inform Zhang Yuan about the change in their plan. After a while, the rest of the members left the gas station, leaving only the two of them behind. Zhao Lijai thought about how to collect the underground tanks as she walked around the gas station. After a while, she looked at the oil pumps and decided to take them together with the tanks. The pumps and tanks were connected. If she only took one of them, what if the oil or LNG leaked and it exploded? She would die without a trace. After she made up her mind, she placed her hands on the oil pump and took a deep breath. When she was ready, she muttered under her breath, "Collect." Boom! The next moment, the oil pump disappeared, the ground shook, and it crumbled into a deep, big hole. Aitg, Jin Zuyan rushed over to her the moment he saw the ground collapse. In the blink of an eye, he had already wrapped his arms around her waist and pulled her into his embrace as they fell into the hole. Zhao Lijai was startled by the sudden change. By the time her mind reacted, she was already in Jin Zuyan's arms and couldn't do anything but let him hug her. After they landed, Jin Zuyan lowered his head to check on her and asked, "Aitg, how are you? Are you injured? Do you feel uncomfortable anywhere?" The worry and anxiety in his voice were so obvious that Zhao Lijai swallowed the casual words at the tip of her tongue. She shook her head and replied, "Brother Yan, I'm fine." With her current ability level and physical condition, even without Jin Zuyan, she wouldn't have been hurt from falling into the hole. Hearing her soft voice, Jin Zuyan rested his head on her shoulder and said, "You scared me to death." The moment he saw her fall, memories of his past life flashed through his mind. Back then, he had failed to catch her, and she ended up torn apart by the zombies. The fear and desperation he felt at that moment couldn't be washed away, even after his rebirth. That would forever remain his worst nightmare, and he didn't want to experience it again. Zhao Lijai noticed his trembling arms, and a blurry figure of a man jumping off a building with his hands reaching out toward her flashed through her mind. After a while, Jin Zuyan finally calmed down and let her go. He stood up and steadied her before releasing her. When Zhao Lijai looked into his eyes, the blurry figure in her memories became clearer. Before, she had only remembered his voice calling her name. Now, she could finally recall that person clearly. She held his hand and said, "Brother Yan, I'm fine." Jin Zuyan looked at her and nodded. Not wanting to recall those bad memories, he changed the topic. "Aitg, did you get the underground tank?" he asked. Zhao Lijai checked her space and saw the massive tank with the oil pump on the grassland. She nodded and said, "Brother Yan, I didn't feel uncomfortable at all. I can get the rest of the tanks." Since she was fine, Jin Zuyan had no objections. After he had carried her out of the hole, Jin Zuyan stood beside her. The two of them stood at a distance as Zhao Lijai collected the remaining oil pumps and underground tanks. Once she was done, she moved the tanks and pumps to a corner of the grassland in her space. Then, she took out her car from her space. "They should be waiting for us. Let's go," Jin Zuyan said as he started the engine. When they left the gas station, only empty buildings and a massive hole remained. At the same time, the Phantom team members were waiting for them by the roadside. Their current location was 8 kilometers away from Linen University, and they could already hear the roars of zombies in the distance. Chapter 165, We Meet Again. 20 minutes later, Jin Zuyan parked Zhao Lijai's car and said, "Aitg, let's walk." Zhao Lijai nodded at his words. After they got out of the car, she stored it in her space and walked toward Linen University. After walking for another 20 minutes, they finally saw their team members. Noticing the two of them, Zhang Yuan looked at everyone and said, "Captain is here. Everyone, get into the car." Although no one knew what their captain had done, no one asked any questions and followed Zhang Yuan's order. Only the new members cast curious glances at them. When they reached the armored vehicles, Jin Zuyan sat in the passenger seat, while Zhao Lijai climbed into the back seat. As they got closer to Linen University, the roaring of zombies grew louder and clearer. 15 minutes later, Qin Luzi said, "Captain, we are entering the zombies' den." Hearing this, Jin Zuyan said, "Stop the car, we will go on foot." Following his order, Shen Jinj informed the car behind them before parking at the roadside. After everyone had gotten out, he stored the vehicles in his space. At this moment, everyone was already taking out their weapons and checking their gear. Seeing this, the new members also began checking their gear. "I think the three of you should take off your white coats. They will hinder your movement when you fight. Also, you need to wash them." When they heard this, they turned and saw Zhao Lijai looking at their coats. Their previously white coats were no longer clean. They were covered with black blood and smelled like rotten flesh. The three of them were unwilling to throw away their white coats and hesitated. Seeing this, Zhao Lijai asked, "How about I keep them for you? When we are done killing the zombies, I will return them." Hearing this, Yu Faiyan thought for a moment and finally took off his coat. He handed it over to her and said, "Sister, sorry to trouble you." "No problem," Zhao Lijai said with a smile. Then she looked at Chen Ji and Jiang Lizhen and asked, "Sister Jiang, brother-in-law, what about you too?" They had already experienced fighting zombies and knew that what she said was true, so they took off their coats and handed them to her. Zhao Lijai smiled and said, "Sister Jiang, I will help you wash them before giving them back. I promise there won't be any stench or smell." After saying this, she walked toward the car and used it to block people's view before putting the coats into her space. The moment she stored them, she checked her space and saw that the black blood and rotten matter on the coats had turned into a wisp of mist and disappeared instantly. Using her mind, she filled a basin with pond water, added some laundry detergent, and soaked the coats in it. When they finished killing the zombies, she would wash them and ask Jin Zuyan to dry them. 10 minutes later, the Phantom team left the area, following Qin Luzi's lead. With every step they took, they got closer to the zombie den. Roar! When they were 50 meters away from the university, they heard a zombie's roar. The next moment, the new members froze in place, their faces pale. Their eyes were unfocused and filled with horror. Seeing their condition, Zhao Lijai quickly rushed toward them and sent her energy into their bodies, protecting their minds. A few minutes later, they regained their senses and realized that their clothes were soaked with cold sweat and blood trickled down from the corner of their lips. Jin Zuyan raised his head and looked toward the tallest building in the university. Standing on the rooftop, he saw a small figure with long limbs. Without averting his gaze, he said, "It's a level 4 zombie." The moment they heard his words, they were shocked. Before they could react, they heard another roar and saw the small figure leap from the rooftop. Seeing this, Jin Zuyan said, "I will take care of the level 4 zombie. The rest of you, kill the low-level ones." "Yes, Captain." Once he finished speaking, he bent his knees and leaped forward. With just one leap, he was already more than 20 meters ahead. Seeing this, Zhao Lijai quickly followed after him. Despite being only level 1, she was able to match his speed, though she couldn't catch up. Suddenly, she felt a gust of wind in front of her and instinctively dodged to the side. Boom! The ground was struck by a heavy object, raising a cloud of dust and debris. Both Jin Zuyan and Zhao Lijai stopped and turned around. Weapons in hand. Aerokahhhh raw. Before the dust settled, a strange roar echoed from its center. Feeling a wave of murderous intent aimed at her, Zhao Lijai raised her dagger. Clang crack. In a split second, a sharp claw collided with her dagger with a loud sound. The force of the attack numbed her arm and pushed her back several meters. The ground cracked beneath her feet, leaving 2 broken lines on the road. She felt the metallic taste of blood in her throat and swallowed it forcefully. When she raised her gaze, a flash of surprise appeared in her eyes. Instead of fear and despair, excitement surged in her heart. Parting her lips, she said, "Mo Bingsu, we meet again. I'm glad you are not completely dead. Otherwise, how could I take your dog's life with my own hands?" As soon as she finished speaking, she opened her palm and struck the female zombie's chest. Crack crash. A disc of water flew from her palm into the zombie's chest, creating a hole. She looked into its eyes and saw anger and hatred flashing in the black depths. Seeing this, Zhao Lijai was momentarily stunned. Raw. The female zombie opened its mouth and lunged toward her neck. Jin Zuyan's eyes widened as he saw this and shouted, "Aitg." Duog boom. Chapter 166, Atoms Combination, 1. Before its sharp teeth could pierce her skin, the female zombie was kicked away by Jin Zuyan. It flew through the air and crashed into a roadblock, shattering it instantly. Standing in the distance, everyone was shocked by the battle between the level 4 zombie against their captain and sister-in-law. Although they wanted to help, their bodies refused to move under the pressure of a high-level zombie. Only when the zombie was knocked down did they regain control of their bodies. Feeling the danger of staying here, Zhang Yuan made a decision and said, "Everyone, follow me closely." After saying this, he rushed toward Linen University without hesitation. Seeing their vice-captain already on the move, the rest of the team quickly followed. Since they couldn't help their captain directly, they could at least stop the incoming zombies. Yu Faiyan watched their backs and gritted his teeth as he followed. He had already suffered internal injuries before the battle even began, making him realize just how weak he truly was. Recalling the words he spoke when he joined the team, a wave of determination filled his eyes. He refused to live a life dependent on others. He would get stronger and find his family. Boom! As they ran toward the crowd of zombies, the sound of battle erupted behind them. Despite their worries, none of them looked back. Zra! Ahead of them, zombies were rushing forward. At the front, a few stood out, faster and more agile than the rest. There are 5 level 2 zombies in the lead. When Mo Wenkai create the wall, Zhang Yuan commanded. In the next moment, the Wen brothers clasped their hands. As they waved their arms, a block of metal, 6 meters wide and 4 meters high, appeared out of nowhere. Boom! The metal wall pierced into the ground, blocking the zombies' path. As soon as it stabilized, the members jumped up and landed atop it. With a thickness of 2 meters, they stood steadily on its surface. Seeing the zombies fast approaching, the Wen brothers continued creating metal walls until there was no gap left for them to pass through. Once done, they took out 5 metal-type crystal cores from their belt bags and began absorbing the energy. In less than 5 minutes, the cores had turned to dust and were blown away by the wind. None of them noticed how frighteningly fast their absorption rate was, including the Wen brothers, as they were fully focused on the incoming horde. Zra! Blocked by the metal wall, the zombies could only reach upward with their rotting arms, trying to grab the delicacies standing above them. Having been through several battles, Zyro Kai was much calmer now and no longer wasting his energy to show off like before. Crash! With a wave of his hand, a massive boulder was taken out from his space and smashed the zombies below into a gory rotten meat paste. Following his attack, the rest of the team launched their own attacks. Meanwhile, Chen Ji, Jiang Lixin, and Yu Feian stood at the base of the wall. Even after being embedded in the ground, the wall was still over 3 meters high. There was no way for them to climb it, let alone kill zombies from below. Seeing this, Jiang Lixin looked at her husband and asked, "Husband, what should we do now?" Chen Ji had no better idea and could only say, "I guess we just have to wait." While the couple had no objection to staying idle, Yu Feian was different. He was desperate to get stronger, and that meant fighting zombies and gaining real experience. After a moment's thought, he looked up and asked, "Zyro Kai, can you help me to go up there?" Hearing this, Zyro Kai stopped his attack and jumped down from the wall. He looked at Yu Feian and said, "Hold on tight." The next moment, he wrapped an arm around Yu Feian's thin waist and carried him up to the wall. As they stood atop the wall, Zyro Kai resumed attacking the zombies. Yu Feian finally witnessed firsthand how powerful his team truly was. Boom! At the same time, Jin Zuyin clashed with the female zombie in midair. A shockwave of energy burst from the collision, spreading across the surrounding area. The energy wave struck Zhao Lijai and sent her flying. Blood trickled from the corner of her lips as she clutched her chest. She stared at Mo Bingxiu with reddened eyes. The gap in their strength was far too wide, killing her seemed impossible. What's worse, Mo Bingxiu was now a zombie with a terrifying regeneration rate. Not only was she immune to pain, but even her severed limbs regrew at a shocking speed. Duog boom! While Zhao Lijai was searching for a way to kill her, Jin Zuyin was kicked in the chest and slammed into the ground with a loud crash. Cough! He coughed up a mouthful of blood. The ground cracked beneath him, leaving him lying at the center of a massive crater. Seeing an opening, the female zombie rushed toward him after landing, madness flashing in her eyes as she aimed her sharp claws at Jin Zuyin's chest. The moment Jin Zuyin saw the incoming attack, he forced himself up, trying to block the attack. Crash! But before the claws could land, a water disc flew through the air and sliced off the zombie's rotten arm. Roar! The female zombie let out a furious roar and turned to glare at Zhao Lijai. Seeing her standing unsteadily, she abandoned Jin Zuyin and charged toward her new target. Jin Zuyin was seriously wounded. Even with his regeneration ability, he couldn't recover fast enough. Watching the zombie rush at Zhao Lijai, he gritted his teeth and swung his longsword. Whoosh! A black crescent of flame flew at the female zombie with a fast speed. Even after noticing the incoming attack, the zombie ignored it, keeping her focus on Zhao Lijai and aiming her claws at her head. A moment before the claws could hit her, Zhao Lijai raised her hand and shouted, "Collect." Chapter 167, Atoms Combination 2. In the blink of an eye, the female zombie disappeared instantly. At the same time, Zhao Lijai coughed up several mouthfuls of blood and collapsed. Aitg. Jin Zuyan rushed toward her and caught her before she hit the ground. He gently patted her cheeks and called out in panic, Aitg, open your eyes, Aitg. At the same time, inside Zhao Lijai's space, the female zombie sprawled on the ground. She raised her head and growled at Zhao Lijai, hatred burning in her black eyes. Seeing the emotion in those eyes, Zhao Lijai asked coldly, Mo Bingxiu, you have your consciousness, don't you? Drrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrr you lived like a princess thanks to my care and support. You were the only friend I had, my trusted aide. I treat you even better than how I treat myself. I thought we were a team and you have my back. But you pushed me to the zombies and watched as I was torn apart and eaten alive." A flicker of confusion passed through the female zombie's eyes as she listened. Zhao Lijai's expression turned cold as she continued, "Mo Bingxiu, without me you were nothing. Look at yourself now. You are no longer human, so why bother clinging to life?" As soon as she said these words, she raised her hand and swung it down. In an instant, the pressure on Mo Bingxiu increased by 100-fold. Boom, crack, crack, crack. The female zombie was crushed by an invisible force, pinned to the ground so hard she couldn't even lift her head. Her bones were crushed and regenerated continuously, but the regeneration of her bones couldn't catch up with the speed of them shattering. Though she appeared calm, Zhao Lijai's mind was on the brink of collapse. She was only at level 1. So it was nearly impossible for her to control a level 4 zombie, even with the help of her space. To prevent any mishap, she walked toward the zombie. When she reached her, she created an ice dagger and stabbed it into the zombie's skull. Crack! With a twist of her wrist, she split the rotting head open. Before the black blood or decaying flesh could touch the ground, it turned into mist and was absorbed by the space. She stood still, watching as her space absorbed Mo Bingxiu piece by piece. Unfortunately, the zombie was no longer human and couldn't feel pain. Otherwise, it would have been far more satisfying to watch her suffer. The pain must be so painful, perhaps even more so than being devoured alive by zombies. When Mo Bingxiu completely disappeared, Zhao Lijai let out a long sigh of relief and closed her eyes. A moment later, she lost consciousness and fell to the grassland. At that moment, the fog surrounding the edge of the space, and the sky receded by 200 meters. Her mental power had increased after finally taking her revenge. Outside the space, Jin Zuyan was still anxious and panicked. As he carried her on his back, running toward his team to find Gao Bohai, he suddenly heard a soft snore. He stopped in his tracks and turned his head slowly, staring at her in disbelief. After a long pause, he finally let out a soft chuckle. Glancing up at the high metal wall, he decided to let his team handle the zombies for now. Feeling exhausted, he sat down on the ground, hugging Zhao Lijai close. While she slept peacefully in his arms, he drank some water and ate a few bites of compressed biscuit to recover his strength before he absorbed some fire-type crystal cores. Meanwhile, on top of the wall, Yu Fian observed the battle for a while before walking over to the Wen brothers. Standing beside Wen Mo, he asked, "Brother Wen Mo, can you help me make an air gun?" When he heard his words, Wen Kai laughed and commented, "Kid, that's a good idea." Wen Mo, a huge weapon enthusiast, was very familiar with air gun designs. He nodded and got to work, creating 3 BB guns, 9 CO2 cartridges and 15 magazines. Afterward, he filled the magazines with 6 BBs. Once done, he handed a BB gun and 5 magazines to Yu Fian. He looked at the empty cartridges and reminded him, "Without CO2 cartridges, these won't work." Just then, Qin Luzi walked over and said, "Give the cartridges to me." Wen Mo passed them to him and asked, "Luzi, you think you can fill these?" "I will give it a shot," Qin Luzi replied casually. He focused his mind and began sensing the air around him. After a few moments, he picked up on tiny sparks of energy, atoms. A smile formed on his face as he guided his energy to draw in the atoms, combining them inside the cartridge. As he compressed the CO2, it slowly turned into liquid and filled the containers. Everyone nearby glanced at him in amazement. Not far off, Feng Yun watched with great interest. It seemed elemental-type abilities weren't limited to manipulating their element. They could also create things, as long as the base materials were present and could be controlled by the ability users. Thinking of this, Feng Yun recalled the composition of methane: 1 carbon atom, 4 hydrogen atoms. It was highly flammable, and even a small spark could cause an explosion. Once Chin Luzi finished filling the cartridges, he handed them back to Wen Mo and said, "If you need a refill, just let me know." "Okay," Wen Mo nodded. Now with a new weapon option, they didn't have to worry about running out of ammunition. Seeing this, Feng Yun walked over and said, "Brother Wen, I want one too." Knowing he had plenty of metal bullets stored in his space, Wen Mo gave him a gun, 3 cartridges, and 5 magazines. Feng Yun then walked up to Chin Luzi and asked, "Brother Chin, can you feel the atoms in the air?" Chapter 168, 100% accuracy rate. Raising an eyebrow, Chin Luzi asked Feng Yun back while casually slicing zombies below with a wind blade, "Why do you ask?" "Brother Chin, if you can create Co2, then you can also create CH4, Feng Yun replied with a meaningful look. As soon as he heard his words, Chin Luzi thought for a moment and his eyes lit up immediately. He nodded and said, "This is a good idea." Eager to test it out, he raised his hands and began combining atoms above the crowd of zombies. Boom! The moment the methane formed, it exploded, triggered instantly by the high temperature from Shenjin's blue flame. The explosion wiped out a group of zombies and startled everyone. Thrilled to have found the perfect use for his ability, Chin Luzi turned to Feng Yun with a grin and praised him generously. "Feng Yun, you are a genius." "I'm just glad I could help," Feng Yun replied modestly, then turned to try out his new gun, leaving his mentor having fun with his newfound skill. Feng Yun often played airsoft with his friends, so he knew how to use air guns. The main differences between the airsoft guns he used before and this one were the weight and the bullets. Although it was heavier, he had already awakened his ability, and both his strength and stamina had improved by leaps and bounds. He held the gun steadily as he aimed at the zombie's head. Pop! A soft popping sound rang out as he pulled the trigger. Thanks to the built-in suppressor, it was much quieter than the air guns he had used before. The metal bullet hit the zombie below and left a hole in its head. Seeing this, Zhang Yuan nodded and said, "Good accuracy." Feng Yun smiled but said nothing. He continued killing the roaring zombies below, in a good mood. Using this gun was less tiring than using his skill to shoot bullets from his space. At the same time, Yu Feiyan was struggling to hold his gun steady. When Wen Kai saw this, he said, "Zyro Yu, if you can't hold the gun steadily, lie on the ground and use your arm as support." Hearing this, Yu Feiyan nodded and lay down. With the ground supporting his arms, he could hold the gun much more steadily. He aimed and pulled the trigger. Pop! As the bullet shot out, his eyes flickered for a split second. For some reason, he could predict the bullet's movement pattern. Crack! The bullet hit the zombie's head, killing it instantly. Seeing this, Wen Kai whistled and said, "Zyro Yu, looks like you were born to be a sniper." Yu Feiyan was stunned by his own accuracy and felt something was off. When he aimed his gun, he could feel a faint warmth circulating inside his body. He aimed again, but this time he didn't pull the trigger right away. Instead, he focused on the warm feeling inside. Suddenly, his dark pupils turned lighter, and several silver lines appeared within them. A sharp headache hit him, and he closed his eyes in pain. When he reopened them, he was stunned to see transparent lines in front of him, like something out of a shooting game heads-up display. As he blinked, the lines vanished. Thinking he was hallucinating, he rubbed his eyes, but when he thought about the lines again, they reappeared. This time, he didn't dwell on the strangeness. He aimed his gun and watched as the lines moved along with it, guiding him toward the target. He raised his gun slightly, and the curve of the line extended, ending at the head of a zombie at the far edge of the crowd. Pop! The moment he pulled the trigger, the bullet shot out and hit the distant zombie dead center in the head. When Mo and Wen Kai's eyes widened in shock the moment they saw this. Even for a veteran, landing a headshot from that distance without a sniper rifle was an almost impossible thing to do. At this moment, Yu Feiyan was too busy analyzing his situation to notice their reactions. Along with the gidding lines, he also realized the bullet had been wrapped in a thin layer of wind, boosting its speed and range. "Did I awaken my ability?" he muttered under his breath. As the realization sank in, joy filled his eyes. He felt like he had been reborn. To confirm it, he quickly aimed his gun and pulled the trigger again. Pop, pop, pop. Each bullet hit a zombie hidden behind the crowd, all perfect headshots. This time, even Zhang Yuan and Chin Luzi noticed his 100% accuracy. The soldiers around him were stunned. They had trained with firearms for years, yet their marksmanship couldn't compare to that of a medical student. If the Eagle team found out about this, wouldn't they laugh until their teeth fell out? With Yu Feiyun and Feng Yun using BB guns to kill the zombies, and Qin Luzi combining atoms to create explosions, their speed in eliminating the zombies increased drastically. At the base of the metal wall, Chen Ji and Jiang Lixin sat on the ground, leaning against it. Although they couldn't see what was happening on the other side, they could feel the ground shaking, and occasional explosions echoed in the distance. Leaning on her husband's shoulder, Jiang Lixin said with her eyes closed, "Husband, I'm tired. When it's over, please wake me up." Chen Ji, enduring pain from internal injuries, nodded. He put his arm around her shoulders and replied softly, "Get some sleep." "Amen," Jiang Lixin murmured as she drifted off to her sleep. Not long after, Chen Ji also closed his eyes and fell asleep. Unbeknownst to them, both had developed a high fever, and their body temperatures continued to rise. An hour later, the temperature around them began to change. While Jiang Lixin's temperature kept rising, Chen Ji's temperature dropped drastically. His body turned stiff, his skin grew pale, and frost began to form on his body. Chapter 169, Deadly Passive Skill. In less than 10 minutes, a thin layer of ice covered Chen Ji's body entirely. His hair, eyebrows, and newly grown beard were now coated with frost. The ice spread to the ground around him, forming a thick sheet in an instant. Even Jiang Lixin, who was still leaning against him, gradually became covered in a thin layer of frost spreading from him. Half an hour later, Zhao Lijai finally woke up. The moment she opened her eyes, she saw Jin Zuyin's handsome face. Seeing that she was finally awake, Jin Zuyin heaved a sigh of relief and placed his palm on her forehead to check her temperature. Then, he sent his energy into her body to check her condition. When Zhao Lijai felt the scalding hot energy flow inside her, she relaxed her guard and let him probe. 5 minutes later, Jin Zuyin retracted his energy and said, "Aitg, fortunately, you are all right. Did you know I was almost scared to death when I saw you facing that zombie?" Noticing the complicated emotions in his eyes, Zhao Lijai hugged his waist and said, "Brother Yan, sorry for making you worry, but I had a plan, and it worked." Jin Zuyin hugged her and didn't ask about the zombie's whereabouts. As long as his Aitg was fine, that was all that mattered to him. After a while, he let her go and asked, "Aitg, are you hungry?" Zhao Lijai rubbed her stomach but didn't feel hungry, so she shook her head and said, "Brother Yan, we should go help our brothers." Since she was fine, Jin Zuyin had no objection. He helped her up and said, "Let's go." The two of them ran toward Linen University. From afar, they could see the high metal wall. When they saw that the wall was blocking the road entirely, they weren't surprised. If not for this wall, they would have been in much more danger when fighting Mo Bingsu. As they got closer to the wall, they noticed a thin layer of ice on the ground. Crash, crash, crash. The sound of ice breaking beneath their feet was crisp and sharp. Noticing the anomaly, the two of them quickened their pace. Not long after, they saw Chen Ji and Jiang Lixin covered in ice as they sat at the base of the metal wall. Seeing this, Jin Zuyin opened his palm, and a black flame floated above it. As he increased the temperature of the black flame, the surrounding temperature rose sharply. In less than 2 minutes, the ice on the road melted and seeped into the ground. He walked toward them to melt the ice around their bodies. Walking beside him, Zhao Lijai noticed that while the ice covering Jiang Lixin's body was melting, the ice covering Chen Ji only lessened slightly before solidifying again. The moment they saw this, they looked at each other and nodded. As soon as the ice on Jiang Lixin's body completely melted, Zhao Lijai pulled her away from Chen Ji and sent her energy into Jiang Lixin's body. After checking her condition, she fed her some pond water and fever medicine. Thanks to the thin layer of ice, her fever had been kept under control. Otherwise, she might have died from the high fever. As for Chen Ji, Jin Zuyin placed him by the roadside and checked his condition. Seeing that Chen Ji was unharmed by the black flame, he created a wisp of it to warm him up. Even if he was awakening his ice-type ability, if he continued to be covered in ice, he could die from hypothermia. With the black flame floating beside him, he was no longer being covered by frost and gradually regained warmth. Not long after, Zhao Lijai walked over and handed the medicine and water to Jin Zuyin while saying, "Brother Yan, we should feed him some water first." Jin Zuyin nodded and fed him a bottle of pond water. Afterward, he used his energy to continue warming Chen Ji's body. The reason why ice-type ability users were so rare in their previous life wasn't because it was a mutated ability, but because most people died during the awakening process. The mortality rate of awakening a mutated ability was as high as 99%, even if it was a natural awakening and not due to infection from the zombie virus. With the addition of the strange phenomena that happened during the awakening process, those who didn't have people to guard them would die for sure. Fortunately, Chen Ji had joined the Phantom team, and with his captain and Zhao Lijai's care, he wouldn't face any life-threatening danger. Since someone needed to stay and take care of them, Jin Zuyin said, "Aitg, how about you stay and look after them, and I will go check the situation on the other side." Feeling tired, Zhao Lijai nodded and agreed readily. "Okay." Jin Zuyin gently patted her head for a moment before leaping to the top of the wall. The moment the team members saw him, their eyes lit up. They observed him for a while and didn't spot any injuries on his body. Judging by his complexion, they were sure he didn't have any internal injuries either. Indeed, their captain was as invincible as always. Jin Zuyin watched the battlefield and quickly noticed the new attack patterns among his team members. When his eyes landed on Yu Fian, he raised an eyebrow. As far as he knew, Yu Fian was one of the top researchers who helped create the zombie virus vaccine. Although it wasn't a cure and the success rate was low, the vaccine had saved countless ordinary lives. Even though they had never met in his previous life, Jin Zuyin had heard of his name. That was the reason he agreed to recruit him, even if he was originally as weak as a chicken. But now, it seemed he had awakened an ability. He stood beside him and quietly observed as Yu Fian killed zombies with 100% accuracy, and he understood immediately, this must be a psychic-type accuracy ability. While the ability itself had no direct offensive power, in the hands of a marksman, it was a deadly passive skill. Chapter 170, Healing-type ability. After checking the situation for a while, Jin Zuyin looked at the number of zombies filling the road and said, "Old Zhang, I will go check the situation in the university. I will leave this place to you." Zhang Yuan nodded and replied, "Okay." As soon as he finished speaking, Jin Zuyin bent his knees and leaped down from the wall. Just as everyone thought he would be swarmed by zombies, he flipped midair and threw a black fireball at the zombies below. Boom! Using the force of the explosion, he propelled himself sideways and landed on the rooftop of a shop near the roadside. Without stopping, he ran and jumped to the next building. The soldiers were full of awe as they watched their captain leap from one building to the next like a martial arts expert from a storybook. Even after awakening their abilities, they could barely jump 4 meters at full strength, but their captain could easily leap more than 10 meters without breaking a sweat. 10 minutes later, Jin Zuyin finally saw the end of the zombie horde. He stood at the guard post of Linen University and saw no zombies in sight. Hearing explosions in the distance, he was sure the zombies within a 1-kilometer radius had already been drawn toward his team. Jin Zuyin looked toward the university's main building and went to investigate. In his previous life, a high-level fire-type zombie had gained consciousness. It became one of the overlords of Linen University and was the one who was responsible for leading a massive horde that destroyed several bases near the city's border. This time he planned to find it and eliminate it before it had a chance to grow stronger. While Jin Zuyin was scouting the university, Zhao Lijai stayed behind to guard Chen Ji and Jiang Lixin. After giving them more pond water and sending energy to stabilize their hearts, their conditions finally improved. Although frost no longer appeared on Chen Ji's body, his body temperature was still dangerously low. Fortunately, Jin Zuyin's black flame was still burning and showed no sign of going out. As for Jiang Lixin, her fever had reduced, and she was beginning to show signs of waking up. Noticing this, Zhao Lijai quickly pulled out her backpack from her storage space and filled it with food, medicine, and several bottles of water. Before long, Jiang Lixin opened her eyes and let out a groan. Hearing this, Zhao Lijai raised her head and asked, "Sister Jiang, are you feeling better?" "What happened to me?" she asked hoarsely. "Sister Jiang, you had a high fever while awakening your ability. Do you feel anything different in your body?" she asked again. Jiang Lixin held her head and said, "I feel dizzy and weak." After a moment she asked, "Where is my husband?" Zhao Lijai pointed to the roadside and replied, "Brother-in-law hasn't woken up yet. he is still in the process of awakening his ability. Upon hearing this, Jiang Lixin pushed herself up and walked toward her husband. Seeing this, Zhao Lijai quickly stepped in to stop her and said, "Sister Jiang, you can't get too close. He is awakening a mutated ability. It's more dangerous than a regular awakening. We don't know what could happen if the process is disturbed," she added solemnly. Jiang Lixin froze in her tracks and asked, "Is he in danger?" Shaking her head, Zhao Lijai said, "Right now, everything is under control. He's not in danger at the moment." Fearing she might endanger her husband, Jiang Lixin didn't approach him and instead sat on the road, leaning against the metal wall. Zhao Lijai handed her a cup of instant noodles and said, "Sister Jiang, you should eat something first." At that moment, Jiang Lixin was indeed hungry, so she accepted the food and began eating. While she ate, Zhao Lijai asked, "Sister Jiang, can you feel any energy inside your body?" Jiang Lixin focused for a moment and shook her head. Aside from feeling weak, she didn't notice anything different. The two were chatting when suddenly they heard a harsh cough. Cough, cough. Jiang Lixin immediately recognized the voice. She dropped her noodles and rushed to her husband's side. Chen Ji was coughing up blood, and sharp ice needles were emerging from his body. His flesh was tearing apart, and blood poured from the wounds, staining the ground red. "Husband," Jiang Lixin cried out in panic. Chen Ji's body temperature plummeted, and his blood began to freeze. Even Zhao Lijai, despite her years of apocalyptic experience, was stunned by the sight. As Chen Ji's body began turning into an ice sculpture, Jiang Lixin could no longer stay calm. She hugged him tightly, trying to warm him with her body as she called out, "Husband, open your eyes, wake up." Tears streamed down her face as her hands and body were slowly covered in ice spreading from him. Her heart pounded rapidly, and despair gripped her. She could feel her husband dying. "No, you can't die, you promised me. Husband, please wake up," she pleaded. Zhao Lijai held Chen Ji's wrist and tried to send energy to warm him, but her water-type ability was naturally cold. Even with her efforts to manipulate the temperature, she couldn't raise his temperature high enough to melt the ice on his body. "If only Brother Yan were here," she muttered with a frown. She glanced at Shen Jinj but decided against trying. Ice and fire were incompatible. Even if Shen Jinj could get his energy inside Chen Ji's body, which was unlikely, he might end up killing him instead. Just as she was racking her brain for a solution, a soft light suddenly emerged from Jiang Lixin's body and enveloped Chen Ji. Zhao Lijai's eyes lit up, and she exclaimed in surprise, "Healing-type ability." "Sister Jiang, focus on the energy inside your body and guide it to your palms. Use your mind to control the energy flow into your husband's body through his pores. You need to calm the chaotic energy inside him. Right now, only you can save him." Chapter 171, Next Move. Jiang Lixin followed Zhao Lijai's instructions without hesitation. The moment she pulled the energy from her body, she felt a burning pain in her veins. She gritted her teeth and endured it. As her energy entered Chen Ji's body, she sensed the raging cold energy surrounding her karma energy. Wrapping her power around it, she carefully guided it through his meridians and veins. Though it seemed simple, the act consumed a vast amount of energy and carried a high risk of death from the backlashes. Zhao Lijai saw Jiang Lixin's face turn pale as paper, and her clothes were soaked in sweat, which froze in less than a few seconds. Acting quickly, she took out a handful of transparent crystal cores from her space and stuffed them into Jiang Lixin's hand. The moment the crystal cores touched her hands, the energy seeped into her body, replenishing her insufficient energy. In under 20 minutes, the energy within the crystal cores was fully absorbed, leaving behind only dust. Soon after, the wounds on Chen Ji's body healed completely, and the chaotic energy inside him finally calmed. Jiang Lixin opened her eyes and saw that her husband was no longer in danger. Relief washed over her, and she let out a long sigh. Then, without warning, her eyes rolled back and collapsed. Zhao Lijai caught her just in time and moved her to a safer spot to rest. Jiang Lixin had nearly drained all her energy and fainted from exhaustion. After thinking for a moment, Zhao Lijai slipped another handful of crystal cores into her hand. Seeing her body begin to absorb the energy unconsciously, she fed her some pond water before turning to check on Chen Ji. Meanwhile, Jin Zuyan had already finished inspecting Linen University. Aside from the zombies trapped inside the buildings, there was no sign of a high-level zombie. He tried to recall memories from his past life, and was certain that the high-level zombie in this area had been a fire type. But apart from that female zombie with high regeneration, the others were only level 1 or level 2. Considering the possibility that the fire-type zombie had not yet emerged in the current timeline, he decided not to dwell on it further. As long as they eliminated most of the zombies in the area, even if the fire-type zombie appeared later, it wouldn't have enough crystal cores to consume. Without the crystal cores, it would be impossible for it to evolve to level 6 or higher. Having made up his mind, he turned and left the university. This time, he didn't head back directly, but began clearing zombies from the rear. Concerned about absorbing too much energy, he used his longsword to chop off the zombies' heads. The black flame engulfed their heads and disappeared moments later, leaving a pile of ashes. The energy accumulated from burning the rotten heads would be enough to offset the energy he used. With his level on the verge of breaking through, he killed the zombies effortlessly. Even level 2 zombies couldn't lay a scratch on him. With Jin Zuyin and his team clearing the area swiftly, the last zombie was eliminated before sunset. From the top of the wall, Zhang Yuan watched his captain burning the zombies' corpses below. Raising his head, Jin Zuyin called out, "Jinj, old Qin, Xirokai, go check if there are any wandering zombies that we missed and clean up the rest of the corpses." Following his orders, the three of them leapt from the metal wall and got to work. At the same time, the other soldiers jumped down, and Wenmo turned the metal wall into countless BB gun bullets, which Feng Yun collected into his space. With the wall removed, they could finally see Chen Ji's condition. Unlike Jiang Lixin, who had already recovered, he was still unconscious. "Brother Gao, please help me check on my husband," Jiang Lixin said anxiously. Gao Bohai nodded and replied, "Let me take a look." Feng Yun took out the medical equipment from his space and assisted him in sterilizing the tools. After examining Chen Ji for a while, Gao Bohai said, "Brother Chen's condition is stable, just a slight fever. He should wake up soon." After he fed him fever medicine, he added, "Sister Jiang, be sure to keep him hydrated and monitor his temperature. If there's any change, let me know right away." Jiang Lixin breathed a sigh of relief when she heard his words and said, "Thank you, Brother Gao. We will find a place to spend the night once old Qin, Jinj and Xirokai return. Everyone, rest up and recover your strength," Jin Zuyin said. "Captain, we have finished clearing the zombies in this area. What's our next step?" Zhang Yuan asked. Jin Zuyin thought for a moment before answering, "We will head to the central city tomorrow. We will clear out any remaining zombies and assess the situation." Zhang Yuan nodded and asked, "Captain, do you plan to send all the survivors to Jiangning City?" Jin Zuyin shook his head and explained, "No, if we send them all there, Jiangning won't have enough supplies to support them. We will direct some to Yunchen, Xianing and Jinwu City instead. These three border Linen, and they are closer than Jiangning. If we manage to clear out more zombies, people may even establish a base here. That would make relocation much easier for the survivors. Old Zhang, start listing the family names of our brothers. We will keep an eye out for them along the way." Zhang Yuan nodded and replied, "Got it." When the red moon rose into the sky, Qin Luzi returned with Xirokai and Shen Jinj. Xirokai handed a sack full of crystal cores to Jin Zuyin and said, "Captain, these are the crystal cores." Jin Zuyin took the sack and nodded. "It's late now, we should find a place to rest." They headed back to their armored vehicles and drove in the direction of Linen University. This time, instead of returning to the factory area, they took the route that led toward the central city. About 30 minutes later, they spotted a small gas station and pulled into its yard. Chapter 172, Divided. After they entered the gas station, Qin Luzi checked the surroundings and said, "The area is clear of zombies." With his words, everyone relaxed. Sitting in the back, Chen Kai and Feng said, "Brother Qin, your ability is so useful." Qin Luzi didn't respond to his praise at all. Only he knew how exhausting and annoying it was to have a map with blinking dots in his mind all the time. No matter how hard he tried to ignore the moving dots, they never disappeared. If not for his high level of concentration, the constant activity would have driven him mad. After parking their cars, they headed to the minimarket to prepare dinner. Since both Feng Yun and Xirokai's storage spaces were full, they didn't take any more supplies for now. Meanwhile, Zhao Lijai went to check the warehouse. Just as she reached for the door, she suddenly froze. Memories from her past life surged through her mind. After escaping from Linen University, she had come to this very gas station. It was where she first met the government soldiers who were searching for supplies. She had followed them back to a temporary survivor camp and stayed there for a few months, until the second rain came and Linen City completely turned into a zombie city. Thinking about those days, she wondered, if she had killed that old man earlier, would fewer people have died? Lost in her thoughts, she didn't notice Jin Zuyan walking over until he asked, "Ajay, what are you doing?" His question snapped her out of her daze. She shook her head and said, "Brother Yan, I'm checking the warehouse." Jin Zuyan studied her for a moment but saw nothing unusual, so he nodded and said, "Go ahead, I will stand guard." Zhao Lijai nodded and went inside to collect supplies. This small gas station didn't have oil drums or gas cylinders, but there was plenty of instant food stored inside. After she had collected everything into her space, the two of them returned to the minimarket. Once dinner was over, the group took turns doing a night watch while the rest of the team rested. While the night passed peacefully for them, the same couldn't be said for the Eagle team. After finishing their training and enforcing the new rule of exchanging crystal cores for supplies, the divide between the strong and the weak became more obvious. At that moment, the Eagle team and Pei Yijin's group were holding a meeting in a small office inside the gas station, while the survivors stayed in the minimarket. "Captain Wei, what do you plan to do with the survivors who can't kill zombies?" Pei Yijin asked. "Young Master Pei, do you have any suggestions?" Wei Wying replied calmly. Pei Yijin smiled when he saw him tossing the question back to him and said, "Captain Wei, you were the one who took them in. You should be the one to decide." Wei Wying chuckled and replied, "Young Master Pei, I'm a soldier. I'm not good at managing people." Pei Yijin thought for a moment, then said, "With the new rules in place, it's no longer feasible to give out food and water for free. If they want supplies, they need to offer something in return." "You mean money?" one of the Eagle team members asked skeptically. "What good is that waste paper now?" Li Yang said while rolling his eyes. "Then what's the alternative?" another asked. Pei Yijin looked briefly in the direction of the minimarket and said, "If they can't fight, then figure out what they are good at. We will eventually need all kinds of specialists. It's better to start recruiting from now on. After you find out their specialization, have them register as workers. Once they are on the roster, they will get supplies as wages. You can pay them daily, weekly, or monthly. That's up to you." The group nodded in agreement. It was a practical solution. They then began discussing salaries and which roles they needed to fill immediately. While Wei Wying and his team were busy finding a solution, the survivors inside the minimarket were shrouded in a gloomy mood. At this point, they had split into 3 distinct groups. The ability users saw themselves as special and no longer wished to mingle with ordinary people. Meanwhile, the ordinary people were caught between fear and envy toward those with powers and couldn't bring themselves to lower their pride to bootlick them. Then there was a third group, a mixture of both ability users and ordinary people, mostly made up of families who couldn't afford to abandon one another. The family members with abilities had no choice but to share whatever supplies they managed to exchange with their ordinary family members. In a dim corner of the minimarket, a group huddled together after finishing 2 packs of biscuits and 2 bottles of water. A woman sat slightly apart from them, her eyes cold and distant as she watched them. She had risked her life to kill lots of zombies and exchanged 2 crystal cores she found for the biscuits and water. But before she could even take a sip of water, her father and siblings had snatched everything from her. No one had asked if she wanted any. No one thanked her. They devoured everything as if it were only natural for her to sacrifice herself for them. As the last crumbs of biscuits were eaten, a young man, her younger brother, patted his round belly and complained, "Father, I'm still hungry." Hearing his son's words, the old man sighed and said, "Son, bear it for now. Tomorrow, let your sister kill more zombies and find crystals to exchange for food." "Father, I don't want to eat the dry biscuits. I want to eat noodles," the young man said unhappily, frowning in dissatisfaction. Okay, we will exchange for noodles then," the old man agreed instantly, as if it were the most natural thing in the world. Upon hearing her father's words, the woman couldn't help but sneer. Chapter 173, The Sole Target, 1. The woman's voice was cold and sharp as she said, "If you want to eat, then go kill zombies yourself. All you know is how to eat and complain. What good are you, really?" The moment the young man heard her words, he was enraged. He stood up and stormed toward her. Seeing him walking over, the woman knew exactly what he intended, to beat her again like he always did. In the past, she might have cowered, too afraid to fight back, but that was before she lived through hell, before she killed those men and zombies. Now, fear no longer had a place in her heart. Before her brother could reach her, she was already on her feet. Her grip tightened around the iron rod in her hand as she watched him raise his arm. "You bitch, how dare you talk back to me with that attitude? Are you tired of living?" he shouted. Thud crack. As his hand came down, she swung the iron rod with all her strength. The sound of bones breaking echoed in their ears. It took the man a moment to register the pain. He looked at his sister with disbelief. He couldn't believe that his once timid sister had actually fought back and broken his arm. Clutching his arm in agony, he howled in pain, "Arg!" Everyone turned when they heard his shout and glared at him. Someone muttered angrily, "If you want to die, go do it alone. Don't drag the rest of us down." The man writhed in pain on the ground, too overwhelmed by the pain to care about a stranger's words. While not many people know, the woman knew clearly that his scream would attract zombies. Without hesitation, she grabbed a filthy rag from the ground and shoved it into his mouth. Gripping his hair, she yanked his head up until their faces were inches apart. Her voice was cold as ice as she warned her in a low voice, "Make another sound, and the next thing I break will be your neck." The man froze the moment he heard her words, staring at her in shock. He couldn't believe this was the same sister he used to beat without resistance, the same girl who never dared to even look into his eyes when she talked. When she saw the fear in his eyes, she chuckled and said with disgust, "I can't believe I used to be scared of trash like you." Then she shoved him to the ground and turned her gaze to her father. It took a moment for the old man to come to his senses. When he did, he shouted, "You unfilial daughter, who gave you the guts to hit your brother?" He raised his hand to slap her, but before he could touch her, she caught his arm and pushed him away with ease. Standing on her spot unmoving, she watched him fall to the floor. For the first time, she realized, this man wasn't strong anymore. He had no power over her like he did before. Her eyes swept past him and landed on her stepsister, who didn't even dare meet her gaze. They were both women, but her father had always favored his lovers' children. To him, she and her mother were just tools, disposable the moment they lost their values and got in the way. Taking a deep breath, she declared, "From this moment on, I Chen Ans will throw away your surname. You are no longer my father. Chen Ans is dead. From now on, I am Lin An. If you dare to come bother me again, don't blame me for being ruthless." After she finished her words, she turned and walked across the room toward a small group of women seated in the opposite corner. As she stood in front of them, one of them said softly, "An, you finally made up your mind." "Sister Zhao, you were right," Lin An replied. "Even if we share blood, he doesn't deserve to be called my father." Sister Zhao nodded and said, "As long as you have thought it through, it's never too late to start over." Lin An looked at the three women before her and gave a firm nod before she took a seat beside them. One of them reached out, handing her a bottle of water and said, "Here, Sister An, drink some." "Thank you, Wan Ling." After she took the first step, the rest didn't feel that hard anymore. Instead of feeling sad, she felt relieved and free. Even though she was hungry, the pain in her body was no longer unbearable when she thought of the hope in the future. Without those burdens, she was confident she would be able to survive in this living hell. After a tiring day, everyone slowly drifted off to sleep, yet no one dared to sleep deeply, as the roars of zombies could be heard from a distance once in a while. Outside the minimarket and small office, several soldiers were on night patrol. At 3 o'clock after midnight, the time when people sleep the deepest and relax, even the patrol guards couldn't help but yawn and doze off. Everyone thought that after the practice session, they had cleared the nearest zombies, and that it was safe to spend the night in this place. Unbeknownst to them, just a kilometer away, a group of zombies was slowly gathering in one place. Under the red moon, their movements became faster, and soon the roads were blocked and a thick, rancid stench filled the air. Standing on the rooftop of the tallest building, a tall figure raised its head and opened its mouth. "It's raw." The sound of its roar was louder than the others and carried a heavy pressure. The moment the zombies heard it, their bodies stiffened and slowly bent their knees. When all the zombies knelt on the ground with their heads lowered, the figure on the rooftop looked down at them. Unlike the ordinary zombies, the one commanding them looked more like a human. Chapter 174, The Sole Target, 2. There were no wounds or rotten parts on the male zombie's body. Instead, his bluish-pale skin added a mysterious charm to his handsome face. If not for the black eyes and sharp nails on his hands, one might never have associated him with a zombie. Not long after, 4 zombies leapt onto the rooftop and knelt in front of him. Arararate, roar. Dioratate, ararate. After one of them let out several low growls, the handsome zombie looked toward the gas station and growled in a low, hoarse voice, grhhh. As soon as they heard the growl, the 4 zombies nodded and jumped down from the rooftop. Raising their heads, they let out a roar in unison, roar. In the next moment, the huge group of zombies divided into 4 smaller groups. The 4 zombies went in different directions, each leading a group with them. Still standing on the rooftop, the handsome zombie looked down at his sharp nail. Hatred and anger flashed in his black eyes as he clenched his fists tightly. Half an hour later, at the gas station, Pei Yijun suddenly opened his eyes and stood up. His sudden movement startled Li Yang, who was sleeping beside him. Rubbing his eyes, he asked, "Brother Pei, what's wrong?" After a moment of silence, Pei Yijun said, "Li Yang, go wake everyone up. We must leave this place as soon as possible." When he heard this, Li Yang was stunned. "Brother Pei, it's not even dawn yet. If we leave now, it will be dangerous." "Stop wasting time. If we don't leave now, it will be too late," Pei Yijun said solemnly and left the small room. Noticing the seriousness of the situation, Li Yang quickly woke up Chu Zhimiao and Han Jai before heading off to inform the soldiers. When Pei Yijun found Wei Wying, he said, "Captain Wei, we must leave this place immediately." Hearing his words, Wei Wying replied with doubt, "Young Master Pei, it's not even dawn yet. If you don't want to stay here any longer, we will leave in the morning." Pei Yijun felt the looming danger, and his heart was pounding loudly. A strong sense of foreboding made him anxious as he insisted, "No, we must leave now or it will be too late." Roar, roar. Just after he finished speaking, they heard the roars of zombies coming from all directions, followed by the ground trembling slightly. "It's too late, Captain Wei, inform everyone to get ready to fight." Roar. Boom. Suddenly, an explosion rang out outside. This time, Pei Yijun no longer had the mood to persuade Wei Wying and turned to leave. The moment he stepped out, he saw several large groups of zombies approaching from every direction. They were trapped in the middle. Seeing this, he turned to the survivors and said, "Ordinary people, hide inside the minimarket. Metal-type ability users, use the surrounding metal to reinforce the gate and block the entrance." After he finished speaking, he noticed that everyone was shivering and no one dared to step forward. Furious at their cowardice, he added, "If you keep delaying, all of us will die here." "Everyone follow his orders," Wei Wying said. The moment he spoke, the Eagle team quickly led the ordinary people to safety. Those with ability went to reinforce the surrounding walls and gate. Aside from the ex-members of the Phantom team, the rest of the people, including the Eagle team members, were panicked and disorganized. Seeing this, Wei Wying realized that even though his team and Jin Zuyin's team held the same rank, his team was promoted because of their numbers, while the Phantom team earned their rank through their ability and skills. Roar. Before the gate and wall were fully reinforced, the first wave of zombies reached the gas station. Pei Yijun thought for a moment and said, "Myro Miao, throw a water ball at the zombies." Although Chu Zhimiao didn't know his intention, she still followed his command. She waved her hands, and a water ball the size of a melon flew toward the zombies. Splash! Seeing that the water ball didn't deal any damage, she was embarrassed and felt useless. Crack, boom! The next second, a lightning bolt flew from her side and struck the zombies. With the water on the ground, the lightning's power increased, electrocuting the zombies and stunning them in place. Seeing this, Li Yang rushed over and swung the blade given to him by Wen Mo. Crash, crack, crash. With each swing of his blade, he chopped off a zombie's head. After breaking through to level 1, his strength, energy pool, and stamina had doubled. After fighting several battles with zombies, he found the best way to use his ability. Unlike Teacher Cao's power, which was pure strength, his power-type ability felt different. Though he wasn't sure what made it different, he knew his metabolism was unusually high. He needed a lot of food to maintain his body's functions, but he also gained more strength compared to other power-type users. Raw! Suddenly, a zombie pounced at him from the side. Seeing the incoming attack, he ducked to the side, but before he regained his footing, sharp claws slashed toward his throat. Clang! He raised his blade to block the attack, but still staggered back several steps due to the impact. Raw, the zombie opened its mouth wide and pounced at him. Boom! Before the zombie could bite him, a fireball flew past his shoulder and hit the zombie in the head, blasting the rotten head instantly. Looking up, he saw a young woman holding a flame-covered blade, rushing toward the zombies. Boom! Crack! Her blade severed the zombie's head, and she kicked away another zombie to the side. She turned to him and said with a frown, "Stand up and fight. Are you waiting for the zombies to carry you home?" Hearing her words, Li Yang snapped back to his senses. He quickly got up and continued to fight the zombies, coordinating with Rongmore and Gu Shao's.